welcome to Inside Eastern Utah. Today we're here with Madelaine Nyffeler, and Madelaine is the president of the Carbon-Emery Board of Realtors, and you've been in the real estate business for 12 years or so?
Yep, going on 13.
Wow.
I don't like to push that 13. People think it's unlucky, but it's been a learning experience. Every transaction is a new thing.
I'm sure.
So have you been doing it here the whole 13 years in
yes.
Carbon and Emery counties?
Right.
So definitely know the area.
I do, and it's funny because I taught school for 28 years.
I was just going to say that.
You think you know the area, and then when you have to get out and find addresses, oh my goodness.
You're like, where is this?
Yeah.
And back 13
Yeah.
years ago, I mean, you didn't have Siri to tell you turn by turn, did
That's
you?
right.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And so it's much easier now. You can just put in the address and it gives you directions, and you can choose a handsome, British voice.
That's
to
right.
give you directions.
Help things along a little bit.
And there's still places in Emery County that I go, I'm not sure I know where this is, but
Yeah.
we'll find it. And,
Drive around for a little while.
Right.
You're bound to run into it at some point,
That's
right?
I'm from Wellington, and whenever somebody new moves in, we say, oh, they live in so-and-so's house, and that's how we get around there.
I was going to say, I don't know east, west, street names. It's like, hey, you take a turn at McDonald's,
Yes.
go down that street till you see this house,
Right,
and then
right.
it's 2 down.
well, and so we tell this joke that oftentimes we get a phone call from somebody saying, I want you to tell me about that house.
And you're like,
Which house? Well, it's that blue house with the great big willow tree in the front yard.
yeah.
And so we have to say, Wellington,
Right.
East Carbon, where
Where
are
are
you
you
talking? And a lot of times people say, well, I don't know the address. And so you'll spend hours, flipping
You're
through
like,
the
let's
pictures.
see, gotta
trying to
find
know.
this.
And I usually say, if I can't find it immediately via the computer, let me take your number and I'll call you back. And sometimes it takes a couple of days. People say, well, it's that farm ground, like you say, next door to McDonald's.
so-and-so, yeah.
And I said, well, and my friends often say to me, well, you're not from around here, are you? And I said, no, I've only lived here 30 years. But there are people who were born and raised here who expect you to know, that that's where Janice Blake used to live.
Like 25 years ago.
And
Yeah.
I wasn't paying attention where Janice lived 25 years ago, so give me an address and I can probably find it. And it's always interesting because if they say, well, there are some houses that you just know.
Yes.
And for instance, there's one up on Smith Drive that has lava rock on it. And people say, it's that house where the lava rock is falling off, and everybody knows that.
You're like,
because
yes, I
we've been
know.
watching that house for a number of years now,
Oh, that's
And
funny.
it just so happens I now have that one for sale. So when she told me, it's the house with the lava rock, I said, oh, I know right where
I
that
know
is.
exactly where that is.
So it's been interesting to see. We have a little bit of a handicap here because all around us, the real estate market is popping.
Oh,
People will put their house on the market and they have 5 or 6 offers before the end of
and
the day.
they're getting more than their asking price for.
Exactly right. And that's Salt Lake and Provo. And in
Yes.
fact, they're very rapidly pricing themselves out of the market. A house that we sell for $160,000 here sells for $360,000
Oh
in
my
Orem.
goodness.
And you think about what the house payment is on 360. I mean, you're talking a couple $1,000s a month.
Right.
Who can afford that? Certainly not the grocery clerk at the.
Right.
I don't know what kind of jobs they
Yeah,
have. but-
exactly.
yeah.
And we've. That's the positive here. I think we have a good, healthy market. It's staying pretty steady. We haven't seen prices fall off, even with the economy. With every time a store closes, we go, oh no. We're going to see prices fall, and they haven't really fallen that much.
Good.
The cool thing about Carbon and Emery is you can still buy a really nice house for under $100,000.
Yeah.
And that's mostly what's moving right now. Everybody wants to spend less than $100,000. But we also have beautiful, wonderful homes up in the 400,000s, and they're also selling.
Are they?
Well, I'd
Yeah.
say that's
Good.
one of the great things is there's really a range. So, for example, my husband and I bought a fixer-upper for a little over $50,000. I mean, obviously required work, but for where we're at in our lives, that was a perfect price range.
Yeah.
Right.
But then you can go clear up to as big or as expensive or nice as you'd want. There's really a great variety here.
And we're still seeing a few that show up as foreclosures. And most of the time, a foreclosure is going to go under $70,000, unless it's a really big house. And then you can maybe get them for 160 or 170, a $400,000 house.
Yeah.
But almost every foreclosure I've seen in the last little bit has been in pretty rough shape.
Yeah.
Has it?
People have a tendency to take it out on the house
Yeah.
when they're leaving, and sometimes they take,
I've heard
Oh.
that. They just take,
first
like,
they put their
odd
fist
things.
through doors
Yeah.
and things,
yes.
and then they take the porcelain, because you can resell it.
Oh.
Sometimes if a house is empty for a long
Really?
time,
So
people
they'll
will,
take toilets and
and
sinks.
I would have never thought about
Me
it,
neither.
I guess.
no, well, and there are some criminals out there that know that you can, if you know how to strip copper, you can
You can get
find
in and
copper
do that.
in an
yeah.
empty home.
Wow.
So we try to tell people, make sure everything is locked up
Mm-hmm.
so that you don't have somebody camping out.
Right.
And every now and again, we have to call the police and say,
we got someone, a
someone's
squatter
squatting.
in the house.
Yeah, and more often than you'd think. And the police have been really good about,
Yeah.
you know, following up and circling around and making sure if they're not there, you know, if there was evidence that somebody was there.
Sure.
We do have some houses that have sat empty for a long time, and usually it's because there's something
Wrong with them.
And we try to encourage people when they're looking for a fixer-upper to make sure you know what you're doing, because I had a home in Huntington where the people had poured cement down the drains
Oh,
as
no.
they left.
Oh, no.
Oh, are you kidding?
Oh, I'm so
And-
glad we didn't run into anything
Yeah,
like that.
and
I guess
oh,
we're
that's-
fortunate.
It's really
just
what we tell
so
people is
destructive and mean.
you really need to have a realtor so that you have somebody covering your back, so that all the steps, you know, all the legal steps are taken care of. The paperwork is getting more and more complicated,
Yeah.
and in fact, they've just written up a new contract, and the lawyers have fine-tuned it for 2 years, and we just got it this last week at
Awesome.
convention. And it's fine-tuned to a point that it's like, oh, every T, every I, you know, you got to make sure every
It's
blank
very
is filled in.
specific.
There are things, and I've had people come to me and say, will you just look at the contract? You know, that we've written up a for sale by owner, and I say, I'd be happy to look at the contract, but you need to understand, if you don't have a contract with me, you don't have any legal recourse. And the thing we're trying to impress on people is that a realtor is there to help you, to protect you.
Yes.
And it's kind of tricky. We've been talking about the market, and a realtor can tell you whether you're overpriced or, and we call it positioning your home in the market instead
Sure.
of pricing, you know, because we want you to be competitive.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that your house gets looked at. And a lot of times people think, well, no, I'm going to list it for $280,000. And I'll say, well, it'll probably
You'll
you know,
sit there for a while.
And I usually tell people, in Carbon County, you're looking at 6 months to a year. It usually takes us like 6 months to get people moving through
Interested.
to look at it, because it takes 2 or 3 months for people to say, oh yeah, there's that house. I haven't seen it, you know, we ought to go look at that. And most things turn around in 30 to 110 days, if they're priced right. And if something sat on the market for 2 years,
It's not priced
it's
right.
not priced right, and it's not priced right probably because there's something wrong with
Wrong.
it. Or it's a house was built for somebody, and it's so specific
That always.
that
That's tough.
you got to find somebody who's really into that. Like if you've got a home that's passive solar, and I just sold one like that. It's a beautiful home, 5,000 square feet under one roof, you know, one level,
Yes.
but it's solar heated, and then it has alternative backup. It's got gas fireplaces, and then 3/4 of the home are earth burned.
Oh.
And the temperature never varies more than 8 degrees, winter,
Wow.
summer. But people are
That's very
leery.
specific.
Yeah.
People are leery about being, you know, dependent on
Uh-huh.
a propane heater
Right.
or the sun. And it was kind of a quirk, because people moved from California and said, we want something with land that's way out there, and this home was.
Oh,
There you
perfect.
go. Perfect.
And so I jumped on them and said, you need to look at this home, and they fell in love immediately.
Great.
So it was, and I was afraid we'd be on the market for a year,
Yeah.
you know, and we got it under contract in 3 months, so that
Oh,
was
wow. That's
that was
great.
that was pretty cool. And when I look at houses in the $300,000 range, they either sell really quick, or they're on the market
For a
forever.
while.
So what kind of light can you shed? I feel like a lot of people are saying everyone's just moving out of the area. Everywhere I turn, there's another house up for sale. What do you see in the market trend? Are you guys staying pretty steady to where you've been in the past few years, or is there been an influx with the downturn of the coal industry?
You know, what we've seen is that the inventory is pretty stable. We have, Emory County was hurting a lot worse than us. I mean, houses down there were selling for $48,000 when they, should have been more like 90 or.
Wow.
But the market has sprung back down there, I think, in part to Bronco. I think there's some optimism happening now,
Yes.
and people aren't running
Right.
away. But in truth, I went back and looked when we started talking about doing this interview. I went back and looked, and the inventory stayed pretty stable over time. Most places around us are struggling with inventory. They don't have but
They
3
don't
months. And we have more like 8 or 9 months worth of inventory. We have about 250 houses in Carbon County, and Emory County's up to about 60 that are for sale. And last year, in July, for instance, Emory County sold 2 houses in the whole
Holy
county
cow.
in July
In the whole
of
county,
16. This year, they sold 7.
Oh, good.
So that's triple.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a pretty good trend. And we're in pretty much the same boat. Our numbers have just gone up. One of the things that is most important to me is that the prices are up like 7 or 8% from last year. That's a good sign.
That is a good sign.
And people are getting about 90% of their asking price. So that makes us feel good. That,
Yes.
because last year it was more like 85%, and so we were climbing back
So
up.
there's definitely some positive trends.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
not all doom and gloom. Like,
Well, and I think that as you look around, you have people, well, like these folks that moved here from California, they are actually older people, but he's working at Walmart. And I just talked to somebody the other day who moved here from Tennessee who's working at Walmart. So Walmart's hiring. I think we've got all this positive stuff happening down on Main Street in the old Penny's building, the wind farm. Solar farms,
It's
yeah.
solar, yeah.
And there are some really good pieces of things for sale that
Yeah.
would, make nice businesses. My favorite building that's for sale right now is where Edgy Bling used to be.
I do
That
love
is the
that too.
coolest. I
you-
said to my folks at Trails End, let's buy this building.
I know,
Let's
it is,
move here.
it's so charming, especially once you get inside there. And it would make, it's a great business and it's commercially zoned, but
Right.
it would make a cute little home too
Yeah.
for someone
And
to live in.
I think it's one of those craftsman type that you just look at the woodwork everywhere and the
Yes.
wood floors.
Yes,
And to me, that would be an ideal home
Yeah.
for somebody that.
I agree.
And they've got a cute little backyard. And then you look at where China City used to be. That's another place that ought to be some kind
A
of business,
business.
And Dr. Thane has an office suite in the medical plaza down there on
Yes.
60th. Another 2,400 square feet of beautiful office space. Just got to find the right.
the right fit for
Right,
it.
right.
And that's what you can help everybody.
Right. Well, and
Yes.
that's when people call and say they're moving from the area or from somewhere else here. I just had a lady yesterday call me that was looking for a house, and I always want to say, so what's bringing you? And that's one of the questions we get to as we get them in the office and start looking at what is it that you're looking for, what brings you to the area, because then you know whether you're looking at somebody who's got a fly-by-night dream, or whether you got somebody
That's gonna stay.
yeah, and we've got great lenders in the area. Everybody's
We
got
do.
money. Their interest rates are great.
Yes.
So now's really a good time. Used to be summer was a time to move up. People in $100,000 homes moved up to 130, 140,000. 140,000 people moved up to almost 200,000. And the last couple of years, people have kind of said, I can
We're
make the
gonna
house
stay
payments. We'll
where
just
they're
stay
at,
where we
yeah.
are. But I think it's time to start looking, because there's some really nice deals out there. And, oh my goodness, some beautiful homes out in Liberty Estates. And you just look around and think, oh, these are beautiful.
Yeah.
And there's opportunity. So I encourage people to look.